Welcome to the September edition of the Shadowverse Meta Snapshot. The mini expansion has been released, and our group of heroes and heroines from the main Shadowverse story have finally made their debut in card forms. One interesting aspect of these new character cards is that most of them get more powerful as you work towards a class-related objective, similar to quests in Hearthstone. In the case of Rowan, you get a copy of Curse of the Black Dragon, which deals damage to you if you are not in overflow, but to a random enemy when you have 10 play orbs. His spear further enhances the effect temporarily. Despite how strong the leader cards are, they had a rather limited effect on the meta. Isabel managed to single-handedly revive Spell Boost Rune and boost it into tier 1, while Urias, another powerful card and someone who likely has an over 99% kill-death ratio in the story, is unable to bring Bloodcraft out of the silent halls of tier 4. While new archetypes such as Eris Haven and Resonance Portal are created from these cards, they are generally much weaker than the previous top-tier decks, so they have a minimal impact on the meta. Before we go into the details, remember to like and subscribe to our Tempo Strategy YouTube channel for the latest decks and strategy content. Despite not getting any new tools from the mini expansion, Bayleon Sword has climbed up to the top of tier 1 in this month's Meta Snapshot tier list. The deck continues to play like a flowchart, cycling Mistalina and Bayleon with dramatic retreat. The deck finds itself favorable against the relatively new Spell Boost Rune deck, and the only counter lies in Sanctuary Haven, which itself struggles against a handful of tier 1 and 2 decks, allowing Bayleon Sword to thrive unchallenged. Coming in second in this month's Meta Snapshot, we have Last Word's Shadow. Luna Soulkeeper has been included into most Last Word Shadow builds to introduce more consistency, but the general composition of the deck remains the same. Matchups-wise, while the deck is slightly unfavored against Spell Boost Rune, it has a very wide range of 50-50 matchups, including its matchup against Bayleon Sword. Last Word Shadow may sport a slightly weaker matchup spread than Bayleon Sword's, but it does very well against Sanctuary Haven, Bayleon Sword's main counter. Mysteria Rune jumps from tier 2 to tier 1 and comes in third on this month's tier list, thanks to the power and options added by Isabel. The deck can consistently deal 18 points of burn damage on turn 8 and heal 10 from the elements of creation. The deck has become very technical to play, as players need to advance both Isabel's Quadra Magic and bottom 5 cards condition for Rending Blast and Resentful Blaze while dealing with your opponent's aggression. Spell Boost Rune comes fourth in this month's Meta Snapshot. Contrary to Mysteria Rune, it has a more straightforward game plan, playing more followers than you can afford to fuse into Isabel to get her different spells and accelerate the 7 spells objective of Quadra Magic. The summoning of Gios, notably Incandescent Dragon, can give you an edge against matchups like Bayleon Sword or Accelerate Forest. Due to the complex nature and wide range of options in spell boost decks, the refined composition of the deck has yet to formally settle. Players have tried playing more cards such as Eleanor and more spells, Miser, and Golem Marshal. Crystal Fencer and the less than 20 package are now being included to turbo Gios and create a really big board on turns 6 and 7. Keep an eye on this deck's development in the upcoming weeks, and be sure to check out Noir's guide for an in-depth analysis on the archetype. Matchup-wise, both rune decks are very similar to each other, with Spell Boost having better matchups across the board, but Spell Boost is weaker against Bayleon Sword when compared to Mysteria Rune. As the deck matures and players learn to pilot Spell Boost Rune, there is a fair chance that the deck will overtake Mysteria Rune in both ranking and popularity. Coming in at the bottom of this month's tier 1 list is Acel Forest. Both cards from the mini expansion occasionally see play. Arisa provides board clears, buffs, and potentially more burst damage, while Raccoon Enchanter is an efficient source of card draw. Matchup-wise, Acel Forest may be weak against Bayleon Sword, but this Forest deck functions as the meta's rune killer. Out of all other top decks on this tier list, it has the most favorable odds against the 2 tier 1 rune decks. Given how well-rounded each of the tier 1 decks are, any of them will do well this month for ladder climbing. Bayleon Sword is rather cheap to craft, is easy to pilot, and has decently paced games that often end on turn 7. For those who want fast-paced games that will challenge your decision-making, Acel Forest is the deck to play, as it performs well against the rune decks. Finally, Last Word Shadow is still strong and consistent, and is a deck that most players are familiar with already. Recent mini-expansions have always introduced powerful game changers that are quite impactful to the meta. This set of cards in Renascent Chronicles shows that you need a little more than just raw power. Besides Isabel making a splash, this month's meta feels more or less like a continuation from last month's meta. meta. It may be a good thing that the design team avoided boosting existing archetypes too much in order to set the stage for future development. Overall, the Tier 1 decks are still pretty fun to play as they are both decently diverse and balanced. The next expansion is due at the end of the month. For our panel of experts, this will be an extremely important expansion for them. The expansion will define the meta for their World Grand Prix run. With cards such as Rooney, Milteo, Sloss, and Ra rotating out, the meta is bound to shift significantly yet again. There are calls to have Bayleon nerfed, as it can be really difficult for some classes to deal with its sheer power. Finally, we have yet to see Bloodcraft become viable once again, although with powerhouses like Mono and Urias available, a viable Blood deck can easily tear the meta asunder. Check in later this month for our exclusive card reveal, as well as more analytical but sometimes memey Shadowverse content. See you all in the next expansion.